Hello, and welcome back to Learning with Lee. In today's episode, we're going to take a look at operators and how you can overload them so that they have unique functionality for a given class. By that I mean, if I, for example, want to be able to add together two links without having to get their items first, I just want to use the operator of addition. That would require me to end up overloading that operator, because as it is right now, that will not work. I might be able to add together two link pointers, but that just is doing pointer addition. It's not actually having something unique or custom occur that is logical for that to happen with this link. Likewise, in case I try to use this operator here to output a link or a linked list, it's not going to work correctly because it's not going to know how to handle that class for outputting it. And us taking care of overloading that will allow us to have unique functionality there without needing to have a print list or print whatever class we want type function defined for every single class we create. So it allows us to just use this one operator for every class, provided that we have overloaded that operator, without having to know all the different names of our various print functions. However, let's begin with something somewhat simple. And for that, we're just going to deal with removing these two sorting functions for greater than and less than, and their comparisons. And in place of them, what we're going to overload the operators for less than and correspondingly for greater than. And the way in which we do that is we can head into link, and the first thing we need to consider is what's its return type. For anything that happens to be a comparison such as this, its return type is going to be Boolean. And that should make sense given our earlier discussion on Booleans and on logical comparisons. So we need it to return a bool. Then, since we're looking to overload an operator, use the keyword operator. It's fairly straightforward, fairly self-evident for why you do that, but that's what you do, and then you follow it up with whatever operator you want to overload. In this case here, we're going to start off with greater than, and then we'll do less than after this. And then, it's important to remember that we are within the context of a specific instance of this class, so we only need whatever link we're comparing to. So we'll just take in a link, and for a bit of sanity's sake, for some of the changes we're going to have to make in the near future to this, so that this is a bit cleaner, because otherwise these operators can work well with pointers, but at the same time, it's a matter of if I wanted to do this sort of a comparison using a link pointer, and let's just say that I did it in here, what I would have to do then is I would have to go with, okay, I have some link, we'll just call it A, and I want to do greater than B. And what I would have to do, though, is that because these are pointers, I would have to dereference them, and that's just done by using the asterisk, like we've seen before. So I would have to do that for both A and B. And using the address of the link, which is what this does here, and gives us a reference to it, which has some advantages over using a pointer, allows us to do this cleaner in terms of just having A and B. And the other important thing to remember is that for this particular type of thing with an operator like this, in case we only have a link pointer, we end up having to dereference A no matter what when we do this, because of the fact that it's not supplied as an argument here. And even if we try to supply both of them as link pointers for this as arguments, it's a matter of that isn't going to necessarily actually work out very well, and it will cause errors. And so for stars, we end up doing this for that one. So there is another way in which we can define these. And as I mentioned, we can have multiple variables, multiple arguments being passed into this. And what we're really looking for in this case here, and the way in which you end up doing this, because it really can only have two different arguments, given that you have a greater than. You either have your item that's before the greater than, you have your item that's after the greater than. So there's only two operands no matter what. So having it within the context of a class doesn't make sense if you're taking in two arguments. So you could make it static so that it's no longer related to a specific instance of a link, similar to what we showed in the previous episode. Alternatively, there's another keyword, and it's known as friend. And what friend says is that I don't want this operator to be defined within the link quasi-namespace, in which if we take a look in split, for example, in linked list, you'll see how I have to do link : split. I can't just use split by itself. the friend allows us to effectively, if I had gone with this as a friend option here, what we'd then do is I could get rid of this link double colon, I could go with split, and it wouldn't necessarily have as many errors there, though it's also going to get a bit confused with this one here, and it's going to have some issues until I actually build it and it can do the correct linkages for it. So for now, that's good enough. But for these operators, it actually makes a lot of sense to use friend for it, and when you have a friend, it still has access to these private methods. However, similar to static, it is not affiliated with any instance of a link, nor is it located within the link namespace similar to how split is over here. So that's the major difference between friend and static. So with this one here, I would have to have both link B and, before that one, link A, so as I can end up comparing A and B. And we'll just go with this one for a less than operator so as we can see how the two of them are different in terms of how we're actually implementing them. So let's copy them. We can put them over into the link.cpp file. We'll put them in above our accessor methods. So for this guy here, all that we're looking to do with it happens to be going our current item, if it's greater than B's item, and we want to return that. And that's really all that you need to do for that comparison. And right now it's giving us the error because I don't have the link double colon in front of it. And that fixes that. So now over here, one of the important things to note, and this is something I forgot to mention with static, if you put friend or static before something in a header file, when you initially declare it, you do not need to repeat that when you define it. So over here, I don't actually need friend, and it will actually retain the same friend that was given in the header file declaration of it. So we'd use this Boolean operator like that. We do this. And then in here we need to return a.item is less than b.item. And that's really all that you need to do for that comparison right there. Now we're going to have to make a couple of other changes, such as down in here, rather than having this comparison here. What we would need to do, and we can just call this one use GT for use greater than. You'd name it use greater than, but we already have use greater than in use as an argument for linked list itself. So this happens to be easy enough to specify with what we're doing here. And then in the different places where we're going to end up using it, well, we can head over to linked list. It's going to give us some errors. And you can see down here how it does this. And basically all we would do is go use GT equals use GT. So that rather than passing down the function pointer, we pass along this Boolean. And then up here, what we do is we don't even care about this section of it, and we don't do that, and we just basically store the Boolean of whatever was passed in up here. Then the next set of changes that we need to make are some of the other spots, such as over in here, where we're doing this comparison. So what we would then do is, if this use GT, and then we're just going to go on over, and let's keep that the same, care of that guy, and we'll use a ternary operator here. So what we can do is we can go then, if B-link is greater than A-link, and we don't even need to deal with the get items, cleans it up for all of that. And then alternatively, if we're using less than, we can then have in our second part of the ternary, well, third part technically of the ternary operator, second part after the Boolean, we can just reverse this one here, and that will end up working correctly for us, so that we end up not actually having to specifically pass these in as arguments. We don't have to create specific functions for every one of our classes and comparisons they might end up having. Now that we've done that, let's take a look at our method here for printlist. And let's take a look at how we can convert it so as that instead it overloads the operator for these double less than. And for this, well, I'm going to leave this alone for now just to show that these are fine for both variants on this. For this one here, I'm going to go with and part of the reason why I'm using friend here is that this is similar to also how you will end up doing this when we cover Java eventually in the future, is that the friend keyword is very important for use there also. So we're just going to end up going, okay, we need an operator, and technically what this traditionally returns for the operator of double less than is it ends up in general returning standard O stream. and not just an O stream by itself, because one of the important things to understand about O streams is that they only get passed around by reference. We'll deal with those in the future and what the unique situations with those are. So in here, what we have to do is we need to basically take in the exact same set of arguments. The major difference is that this is going to complain if it takes in a list pointer as opposed to a list. And by a list, I mean a linked list, just since it happens to be giving some grief about it. So we can do that. We can have it pass it in by reference also, similar to how we did with this one up here. You see the stream put before the list. That's because of the fact that you see your stream over here, you see your list over here. And the order in which these arguments are provided corresponds to the order in which these are on each side of it. So if I did something such as the opposite, and let's just copy that there, and pass in this guy, then what would end up happening is it would actually expect, as you might guess from sort of the way in which these arrows are pointing, it would expect for you to go from your stream and take something from that stream and put it onto your list, which isn't what we're looking to do right now. So what we're looking to do now is we're looking to take this and to replace print list. So let's just take that, delete that, as well as also delete print list from here. There isn't really any need for that once we're in here. Delete friend, because otherwise it's going to complain about that. We don't need to check for a null pointer since we're passing in by reference. So that can go away. Then over in here, just shift tab this over. And the final thing we need to do is we need to return the stream, as this is the customary way in which you handle this operator itself, is you end up returning the stream that you get passed in over here. Oh, and that's the other thing it's complaining about, is the fact that I left that semicolon up there. So now that we have this, I can just use list.firstItem and replace all of those arrows with dots. And one other thing I can do in order to make my life a bit simpler for this is, let's say that I want to have link end up being something that can be output itself. So let's end up creating an OStream operator for link instead. Well, in addition to this, not really instead, but what we can do is we can just hop up here, we can do this, let's make it a friend, and rather than a linked list, we want to take in a link and a reference to a link by that. So grab all that, grab this guy, copy it into link. We can just put this below these two operators down here. We can get rid of our earlier greater than and less than functions. Then in here, add that in, do this. Since we know that we have to return the stream, we might as well do that to begin with and return our stream. And what we then want to do with it, and this is pretty basic, we just want our stream here, and we want to then append onto it our item. So, well, really it would be link.item. And that's all that we actually need to do for this one here. And that effectively gets rid of this step here in case I just end up, as opposed to doing this, do this, because of the fact that we have the operator overloaded. And this is something that really adding in the commas and the like only makes sense when we're outputting a full list of them. It doesn't make sense to have that with each individual link. So that's really all we need to change for that. Allows us to loop through it currently, does the correct stuff for ending this current line, and that ends up making all the changes that we need to do in there. Now, of course, we're going to need to change this because right now this one here was using print list, so as that it could be accessed by intro.cpp. And what we need to change then in here is we can just go with stream, do that, and add on the list to it. And that will work just fine for how we end up doing this. It will call this operator, and it will go through our custom logic for it. That's probably enough on operators for today. We'll be covering them in the future as they come up, as we encounter different problems that we need to solve with different classes that we create. And we'll end up using them quite a bit, so it's a good thing to remember, and if you need to get a bit of practice with it, spend some time creating some different operators for things such as adding links together, so that then you can get a link out of those two links that you add together. Spend some time seeing what causes errors when you try to overload an operator, what doesn't, and spend some general time looking around at it. And with that, I'm going to thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day.